amazing resource that every club has to accomplish so much good in our own communities and throughout the world. This evening, I am going to let Pat Kurtzman talk about how to proceed with a district grant. So I would love to turn it over to Pat Kurtzman from the Kirksville area. Thank you.
Is Pat with us, or is she still having internet issues?
I didn't hear you, Kim.
You might be having internet issues.
Yes, I'm here,
Okay,
but
good.
I can't hear anybody. Everybody keeps cutting in and out, so.
And we are ready for you to share with us, Pat, about district grant process.
Looks like she's, I don't know if she left or came.
I wonder if she tried to log out and log back in since she was having difficulties.
Yeah, because I lost her on my screen for a second.
I will go ahead and, I know she's got an actual program. I will go ahead and explain right now. Each year, the district has district grant guidelines that we go by, and the clubs must follow those guidelines as to how to apply, when to apply, the criteria that will confirm whether your grant will most likely be funded. Also in final reporting, what the final report must contain, the deadline for those final reports. You will find the guidelines and the applications on the district website. You will notice, though, that things change slightly from year to year. This last year, of course, due to the pandemic, we had a lot of fluctuation in our guidelines and deadlines because we had to be flexible to work with clubs and give them the time to get their projects done and the final reports in, since many clubs weren't meeting. Many businesses weren't operating to full capacity to be able to give the clubs the resources or the approvals and go ahead. Some clubs do projects in their own communities that need city or county approvals to do the project. And so we were very flexible with our timeline last year. So you'll see a little bit of variance in the guidelines and deadlines this year. The 21-22 guidelines are being reviewed at this time. And those will be presented to the executive council and approved within the next few weeks and up on the district website as well. Do we have Pat with us yet?
I see her keep floating in and out.
How many of your clubs have applied for district grants before? How many of you have been involved in the process? I know most of our clubs have applied at one time or another. Especially last year, we had an amazing amount of funds available. We called it the Kimbrough Challenge Year. Thanks in part to generous Rotarians and clubs in our district, but also because Ed and Marguerite Kimbrough were very generous in leaving the Rotary Foundation funds.
Do you know what the total is going to be yet for next year for the money?
I don't know that yet. My apologies. I researched a lot of things in case we got questions, David. I did not research that. We would know a base figure, but not a total figure. I can get that figure to you. We'll know a base figure based on the giving 3 years ago, but we won't know. There's still a little bit of endowment earnings that come into it. And this year, Rotary Foundation came back and gave each district a portion of the funds back out of their global grant funds. So I'll share a base figure with you. I'll get that to you and you can send it out to all of the attendees, but there would be a little more added to that. So yes, we do have a base figure.
Okay.
At this time, I just don't know it. I didn't look that up. My apologies.
Thinking it was around 170 is what we had in giving 3 years ago, but I don't remember the exact amount.
That sounds right. I will look that up and send that to you.
I see your back, Pat. Are you?
Yes, I'm having a little network difficulty, but I signed on to a different network, so we'll see if that works.
Okay.
Can you share the screen with me so that I can put up my PowerPoint?
You should now be a co-host. Does that allow you to?
Okay. Let me see if I can get this to go here. Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. What I'd like to talk about is applying for a district grant, and I wasn't here while Kim was talking, but there are basically two different types of grants, one of which is a district grant. The other is a global grant. For the most part, those are the general categories. And our district grant comes from the foundation. And as I think was explained to everybody before, 3 years ago when we did our sharing or donated to the foundation, they put that money into a savings account and earned some interest on it. And then 3 years later, they send back half of the money that we sent in. And that money, those funds are used for district grants and for educational grants and that kind of thing. Before a club is eligible to apply for a district grant, the current president and president-elect must sign a memorandum of understanding. And basically what that says is that the club is responsible for the financial part of getting a grant. They are responsible for the money, and they agree to follow the rules that are established by the foundation, by the district. The other thing that needs to happen is that the current president-elect, because we usually apply for our grants before the beginning of the year when the president-elect will be president, and the grant manager must complete the online grants training. And we went to online training last year in response to the COVID, although we had talked about doing that before. There are requirements for grant. First of all, it must fall into the areas of focus that are decided on by the foundation. These are peace building and conflict resolution, disease prevention and treatment, water, sanitation and hygiene, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, and community economic development. And beginning in July of this year, it will also include a focus on environment. So it's been increased, and this is the first year and the first grants that can utilize that. We had a large year a couple of years ago, and we gave out larger amounts than that, but generally our maximum grants have been around $2,500 from the district. And in order to get that money from the district, which the district is eligible to apply for, we actually have to apply for a grant for the entire district to support the projects that the various clubs use. You have to go have ongoing support to the beneficiary. In other words, you have to have a mechanism in place that provides that the project that you're doing is ongoing. It just doesn't die at the end of it. So for instance, if you were building part of a park, you would need to be sure that someone was going to be responsible for mowing the park and the ongoing maintenance of whatever you put in. Typically, in that case, it might be the city. You have to have hands-on implementation. So the members of the Rotary Club do need to have some sweat equity. The grant itself cannot be solely a financial contribution to a charitable organization within the community, because the club is responsible for making sure that the funds are spent wisely and appropriately, depending upon the project. And you're not allowed to just sign them over. There are, for instance, if you're working with the school district to buy books, you might, because the school district could buy books cheaper than what the club could, because they buy in higher volume, you might write them a check and pay the expenses for the books, but you do need to justify writing the check to the district when you do your final report. And that's really what the special purchasing has to do. So any organization that you're working with that can buy products or services at a less expensively than what you can write them a check and have them do the purchasing, but you have to document that. And you have to have sustainable impact of that project. It has to be usable for years, no matter what it is. You may not use the grant for employee salaries or overhead. So if you're repairing a building, and that's what you put the grant in for, you can't pay somebody's salary. You can pay a contractor to come and do that, but you can't pay salaries. It can't be used by the organization that you're working with. The foundation is really big on making sure that we give Rotary credit for what it's doing, because we do an awful lot of good things and don't always get credit for it. So signage is important, but this doesn't mean that if you do a project that a sign is not appropriate, or you might not even have a place to put it, then you do need to come up with another means of advertising your involvement with the project and Rotary's contribution to it. There can be no expenditures before the grant is approved. You also have to have a separate banking account, a separate bank account for the grant. You cannot run it through your club's regular bank account, because Rotary Foundation would like us to keep those funds separate. You also have to have 2 signatures on each check that is written to pay expenses against the grant account. The reason why the foundation requires this is because it demonstrates that at least 2 members of your club have approved the expenditure. So it isn't just somebody paying their Uncle Harry for doing some work. How do you develop a grant? You select a project that meets the grant requirements. And when you look at the application and you get it, you'll notice that the application is written directly off of the requirements from the foundation and those from the district. So if you answer the questions, pick out what the area of focus is that your project fits into. And I might add that you want to make sure that you pick out one area of focus. What does it best meet? And then set out to demonstrate to answer that question. You would, once you pick out your what your project is, you'd complete the grant application. You'd need to obtain your board, club board approval for the grant project. And because we're asking them to come up with matching funds, which are generally 1-to-1. And then you submit the application to the chair of the Grants District Committee. Okay. Now if I can find you all again, there we are. We actually are in the process of getting all of the documents for 2020, 21, or 21, 22 ready to go to the executive council of the district. And, anyhow, I think we're putting them through what, in February, Kim? Is that correct?
It will be the last week of January, so they'll be ready to go by
Okay.
the last few days
Yeah.
of January.
So about the middle of February, the current president of the club, you all as president-elects, the grant manager who you have in your club, and the foundation chair in your club will receive copies of an email from me and outlining what the timelines are, when you need to submit your application, when your final report will be due. You will also get copies of the application, the district guidelines, which outline all of the rules and give you an overview of the grant process. And you'll get a copy of the final report. So you get the documents that you need. The person who is really responsible for the grant in the year that the grant occurs is the president of the club, and they are ultimately responsible for the grant. That doesn't mean that they have to write it. In fact, you need a grants manager at least to help you through the process. They generally fill out the application, and then it comes to the president of the club and the president-elect, because the project will go over into the next year by the time you get the reports and everything, final report in. So you both will sign the final report or the application, plus the grant manager signs it. Prior to that time, when the application comes out, we usually have about a month to a month and a half for you to go out and get your training done online, sign your memorandum of understanding, which, by the way, I'll send to you with that memo also, or with the email. And if you have any questions at all after you get the email, you don't understand, or you have a problem filling out the form or anything else I can help you with, my phone number and my email address will be on the memo. And I would really welcome you giving me a call and asking me if you have any questions. If I don't know the answer, I certainly have a lot of resources where I can reach out and try to identify somebody for you. But this is about my third year involved on the committee, and then I was the grant manager for my club prior to that. So next form. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, this has been a year of independence. If there's happens to be an organization within our area that would also match any of the monies, is that okay with the district grant? Like we have to put in ours from the club, and the district puts in some too, and then could have a match?
That's fine. The district does not care if you spend more money than the combination of what the district provides and the clubs provide. That's fine. And I'm assuming that because they put in money, they're involved in making sure that the grant comes to fruition. And they're working on it also. You want to focus, if you're doing part of a large project, you want to focus on your part of the project, because that's what you're really applying for the grant for. But you're welcome to go out and get money from whatever source you like, as long as you recognize Rotary at the end, that Rotary was involved in it and that the foundation contributed money to it, or the district did.
Okay.
And that also give yourself credit for doing it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Pat, may I add a couple of comments?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was a very good question, but last year too, we had quite a few clubs within the same community, several little communities that the clubs would partner together and be able to bring together that much more funding to do a larger project. So that is completely acceptable as well. Also, I wanted to point out, Pat mentioned the completing the MOU and the online training. Even if you don't think at this point that you may apply for a grant, I would recommend going in and doing the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, and the training. For the little time it takes, at least you've got that done and you'll be within the deadline of that, that if a project does fall in your lap, you will be qualified to apply for the grant funds. Also, if your project does not take all of the funds that you have asked for, it is required that you return those funds, because you will have to provide receipts showing all of the expenses for the project. And then as well, if something happens, we had a couple situations this last year that because of the pandemic, they could not go through with their project. The entire amount of grant monies funded need to be returned. So I just wanted to bring those items up. Thank you.
You'll notice when you sign the MOU that the president is actually taking responsibility for returning that money if it's not used or if there's any left over.
Hi, this is Tom Davis.
Does anyone else have a question?
I do. Can you hear me? This is Tom Davis.
Yeah, I can hear you, Tom.
Yeah, I do, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to see you, Pat, and thank you for your help and all your emails back and forth over the years. Sure. Is the time frame for the application and the disbursements of the approval process going to be about the same? And the reason I ask is that, you know, I don't think we got our disbursement of the funds for this current year grant until pretty late into the fall. And especially with COVID, that's putting a little bit of a pinch on us to perhaps get our project done in this current year. And so I'm wondering whether, you know, the process can be accelerated to some.
We're actually trying to go back to, Tom, to the May date for submitting the application, and then I'll be trying to turn around the applications as fast as possible to get them to the grants committee so that they can make a decision about the funding. Once that happens, then we need to apply for that grant from the foundation. And it's, Kim, how long did it take us this year to get that? It was actually quite a while, a month or more. I'm sorry?
Right. All the final reports have to be in though from the previous year before they will issue any funds out.
Yeah, it makes it real difficult. One of the things that happens, Tom, when people send in their applications and also their final reports, is that I generally get those and look to make sure that they're complete, because the district gets audited by a committee within and looks at the entire thing. We're also subject to audit from the foundation, as is every club who applies for a grant. But one of the things that I do, and those that are helping me, is go through and make sure that all of the required items by the foundation and required in the report are present. It's amazing the number of things that get left out, not necessarily on purpose. I think sometimes it's because people don't know that they need to come in with them. And so we've tried to make it more specific on the application as to exactly what we're looking for. And people get better at that, they have more experience with it. But that slows down the process. This year, it took us almost a month and a half to get all of the stuff together just after the applications to get it to committee. So it was kind of difficult, and then made even more difficult by the fact that the COVID stuff kept having us to push back the due date. And we were all the way into the end of November before I got all of them in at all. So the checks were really late in coming out. And I'm not sure what was to be done about it, but we're hoping to be able to get that done. I would like to see us get the checks out at least by the end of July. But it just depends on whether everybody gets everything in and we get all of the documents that we need to make a decision. And then we can get our grant applied for from the foundation for the district.
Thank you.
Pat, I have a question. This is Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
My question, because I don't have a lot of experience with grants or MOUs, and it looks like I've got an unstable connection as well. So you're saying, Kim had said it would be good to go ahead and do the MOU, whether you applied or not. So the MOU then is with the
Yes.
district or the foundation? That's what I'm not clear on. With the district?
The MOU that we use is a district one. And I will send it to you
Okay.
when I send
So
out
it's an agreement
the
we have.
memos with the district.
So it's not any agreements for the final project or whatever it is, or whatever groups you might be working with. This is the MOU for the district, with the district.
Right. And it is actually, it's very similar to the one for the foundation, and it meets all the foundation requirements, but it establishes a general financial responsibility if you should apply for funds. It can be done whether you actually apply for the funds or not. In fact, it's a really good idea to do that.
Okay.
And then you're prepared if you decide and come up with a project that will work for you and your club.
Pat,
Okay.
this is Ruth Beamer. Are those target areas that you mentioned online now, or will you be giving those to us later? The only one I wrote down was community development.
They are both online at the foundation, but they are included in the criteria sheet for the grants, and those are they'll be part of the documents that come out to you probably about the middle of February, depending on how long it takes us to get the stuff together. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Pat, can I make a comment?
Any other questions?
Hey, Pat, this is Kent. Can I make a comment real quick?
Sure,
Great job, by the way.
sure, go ahead.
One of the things that she mentioned and Kim mentioned too, it's real important that you have your president-elect, and your grants manager do the training and do the MOU, because global grants, we don't have a deadline set for any of that. So you might decide to do a global grant down in December or January next year, but if you don't have the MOU and the training done, you won't be qualified to participate in that global grant. So that's another reason to get that done, even if you're not
Right.
doing the grant.
Can one of either the president or the president-elect also be the grant manager? Is there any problem? Does it have to be three people?
Actually, the president-elect can be the grants manager, but the president is actually specifically prohibited from doing that, although the president does it in a lot of clubs. But they're specifically prohibited from doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Frequently, it's a past president who does that also. It depends. For instance, the club I belong to has a grants committee, and the chair is actually the grants chair. The chair of that committee is the grants manager, but so it varies from club to club. Anyone else with a question? I just want to repeat again that if there's anything I can do to help you, should you decide to have a grant, if you apply for a grant, if you've got an idea and you want to know whether it's something that'll work, or if I can help in any way, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that. As I say, I have a fair amount of experience with grants. I also used to do this as part of the job for my job before I retired. So happy to help if I can.
And kind of along those lines,
I guess that's it, David.
kind of along those lines, I would really encourage everyone to kind of think outside the box this year. Hopefully, come the middle of summer, we'll be coming out of all the COVID pandemic and the numbers will be going back to more normal. And we can get back to a more normal Rotary type of world. And so I would just kind of look at almost like a relaunch of Rotary, and what kind of project could you do to kind of help with that relaunching of Rotary. So I brainstorm, think outside the box. The other thing, and this has been going on for several years, we're really, really bad about tooting our own horn. We do a lot of great things with the 56 clubs in the district, but we never, ever tell anybody about all the great things that we're doing. We really don't even share from club to club. So when you do a project, take tons and tons of pictures, send them to the district so that we can share that out and let other clubs see what you're doing. Not only does it help promote what you're doing in your own community, it could also spark an interest or an idea for another club to say, hey, we could possibly do that in our own community. Let me reach out to Jennifer and get more details on what they did. So I'd just strongly, strongly encourage you to publicize what you guys are doing with all the great work that your clubs are doing. Kim, did you have any follow-up comments?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kent and Pat, but I think a photo is now a part of the final report. It is required. So very good point, David. But I believe that is part of the final report, some type of a photo submitted with your final report. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of dates I just want to make sure that we have on everyone's calendar, and a couple of new items for you to start thinking about, kind of along the foundation community service guidelines. This past October, I'm friends with a lot of people. My office is actually in District 5710. And so I know a lot of what goes on with our Kansas neighbors. And so World Polio Day is October 24th. And a lot of clubs are using that day as a polio fundraiser. One of the past district governors in 5710 happens to own a bar, it's called Transport Brewery, and it's right around the corner from my office. And I don't know if you can see this, but they did a fundraiser that night called Pints for Polio. And you basically came in, and for $10, you got your first round, and then you got this cup. And I think he was open from 6 to 10 o'clock that night. And all of the proceeds they had from beer sales that night, they turned around and donated that money to the Polio Now Found funds. So I just kind of plant that seed in your idea to think about doing an event for World Polio Day on October 24th. Another day, it's not as well known here in the Midwest, but back on the East Coast where a lot of the events happen, is on September 11th. It's become known as a National Day of Service. They encourage people, especially a lot of corporations have gotten behind this that are involved in community service. So they take time on 9/11 to go out and do some type of service project. It doesn't have to be all day long. It can be 1 or 2 hours. What I've done with my Boy Scout troop on 9/11 for the last many years is we go out and do a trash pickup on 9/11 as part of the National Day of Service. So again, I would kind of like to plant that thought, that seed in your mind about possibly coming up with a service project that you can do on 9/11 for the National Day of Service. I have booked November 5th as for our foundation dinner. That will be on a Friday evening at what is now known as Hotel Kansas City. It's the old Kansas City Club in downtown Kansas City. We're in the Tudor Ballroom, which my club, Club 13, met in that ballroom probably for close to 30 years. That's where we would have our lunch meetings. And so now that building is, it had gone from being the Kansas City Club to they turned it into a private condominium apartment building. And now they've given up on that idea and gone back to being a hotel. So kind of mark that date, Friday, November 5th for our foundation dinner for our year. Because of COVID and last year's foundation dinner, we weren't able to have it in November, but Don, the current DG, is hoping to have that on May 22nd of this year. So we'll kind of have 2 foundation dinners kind of close to each other. He and I have had conversations about that, and we're looking at kind of having 2 different kind of events. Since we are so close together, we don't want to have the traditional back-to-back foundation dinners, but we will be doing those 2 dates there. There should have been an email that went out to current club presidents about in Club Runner getting all of your officer positions up to date in Club Runner. They want to know who your foundation chair is, membership chair, so that those people can start getting flagged for various emails. The one that is probably the most critical is your presidential lineup. I know Kent's on this call tonight, and he's the district governor after me, and he really wants to start knowing who his club presidents are going to be. So the sooner you can get that information updated in Club Runner, the sooner that he can start getting to find out who his club presidents are going to be. Show Me Rotary is on March 27th, that Saturday. We're getting closer and closer to having the schedule finalized for that day, and I'll get that out to you as soon as we can. Registration, you should be seeing an email registration for that. Hopefully we have a meeting either going out this Friday or the first part of next week. You'll start seeing the registration for Show Me Rotary. Also, hopefully you saw the email from Mark Horner about he has 2 Zoom meetings scheduled for membership. They're both scheduled for 6 p.m. The first one is going to be on January 28th, and he's going to be talking about corporate memberships and satellite clubs. And then the second one is going to be on March 4th about your club's involvement in community service. So I'll probably be including that on my email on the wrap up from this meeting as well. on those dates. On this kind of pre-pets type of training coming up, we will hopefully, right now, it's either going to be February 3rd or February 17th, but I'm hoping for the 3rd on a session on public relations. And then we'll also have another session in early March on goal setting. So if you got any questions or need any more details on those, shoot me an email. And then usually what I'm trying to do on the bottom portion of my emails is just kind of put a list of upcoming events on the bottom of all of my emails, so you can kind of see what's going on and getting things updated on your calendar. And then we do have an event coming up on Wednesday, January 27th. Jennifer Bergman with the KCI Club really snagged a very, very unique opportunity for this district. And I'm going to allow her to speak about that now. And
Thank you, David. David's going to share his screen here real quick. So the KCI Rotary Club, and along with the Empowering Women in Rotary, we are sponsoring Jennifer Jones. She will be the 2022-2023 first female president in the 115 years of our club. And she will be doing a webinar for us that day, a live in-person webinar. So you have the opportunity to register for this. We've had a lot of information going out about this, but the quickest way is you can either go to the empoweringwomeninrotary.com website, or you can go out to our Facebook page, KCI Rotary. There are links out there to register. We have 500 seats on the webinar. I will tell you 200 seats are already spoken for, and we've only had this out for a few days. So those remaining 300 seats are going to go very quick. We will try to record it. We're trying to work with Rotary International and make sure that we can record it. If your club happens to meet on a Wednesday, I would recommend making this your meeting for that day, maybe postponing whatever you had that day to listen to her. Jennifer is a fantastic speaker. We are super excited to have her. We will have her for about an hour that day. So we'll be able to, we have a facilitated portion of the meeting where we'll go through and ask her questions. And then we'll have, 10 or so minutes just to let the people on the webinar, anybody who attends, to type in a question and ask a question. So super unique opportunity. Long story how this all came about, but we are blessed with this opportunity. We're so happy to share it with other clubs, and we're super excited to have Jennifer come speak to us.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And that is also, we shared it on the District 6040 Facebook page today as well. So hopefully you won't have any trouble finding that. But again, if you need it, shoot me an email and I can get more details out to you. I know in the past, several of your clubs may have participated in Greater Kansas City Day. And we just found this news out this week. But Greater Kansas City Day will be looking new and different. The Royals have kind of, with their new ownership, they want to take it in a different direction. So we don't have their sponsorship. And the year prior to that, the Star walked away from their sponsorship. So whenever Major League Baseball decides to have opening day this year, that will not be Greater Kansas City Day. But the committee is getting together and brainstorming. And so we're looking for, and if anyone has any ideas on something they think would work for Greater Kansas City Day, shoot me that as well. But I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up that opening day will not be Greater Kansas City Day this year. And we won't be having the traditional paper sale, flag sale, fundraiser that we've had in the past. So that's all I had for this evening. You're free. Will be hanging around on the call for a while. If anyone's got any questions or comments, anything they want to talk about, I'll keep the meeting open for a while. But be on the lookout for more emails from me, and we'll hopefully be seeing everyone on February 3rd to talk about public relations and public image. Thank you all for joining tonight, and look forward to, it's going to be a very, very busy couple of months. And then you get about a 2-month lull, and then it will really take off come July 1st.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thanks.